Super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot.
I'm not sure when exactly it was that I first got to play through the Superhot beta, but I do recall being pretty awestruck at just how unique and interesting the concept and the game mechanics were. It's a game where time only moves when you do, and your character is an unnamed agent in a simplistic looking corporate environment, killing lots of nameless digital red enemies using a pistol and your bare hands.
Super hot, super hot.
Now, the beta took all of 10 minutes to finish, but it did end on quite a mysterious note, and what little gameplay was on offer, I think left most people wanting more. Well, after a 2-year-long development cycle, yes, 2 full years, we finally got the release of Superhot, developed by the aptly named Superhot team, and it's available for Microsoft Windows and also the Xbox One. It's a game literally built around a gimmick, and you're probably wondering whether or not it manages to pull it all off. Well, let's find out, shall we?
Super hot.
As is the case for a lot of these kind of experimental indie games, the story is told quite ambiguously and in dribs and drabs. According to what we're told through a chat dialogue between two people in a computer system, there's a mysterious game going around called Superhot.exe that's really addictive and innovative. Yes, the irony was not lost on me. After playing through a few stages of the current version of the game, your character then has to bypass a password to see the remainder of the levels, at which point the executable begins having bizarre effects, causing your system to glitch out and changing the context of what you say during subsequent chat sessions with your unnamed friend. It's very Matrix-like in a sense, with this theme of the system taking over, and the way your character kind of logs in and out of this digital environment. Visually, the game certainly looks interesting. It's often hard to tell whether or not developers choose the simplistic look because of a lack of artistic talent or because of a conscious design choice. Superhot seems to be one of the games going with the latter because some of the effects in this game look really good, especially the particle effects with killing an enemy or smashing glass. Sound, on the other hand, is horrid, with adequate weapon effects but horrible distorted buzzing sounds used to simulate the workings of the computer system and no music to speak of. The noise that plays during loading screens sounds like someone grinding sandpaper through the inside of my skull. I'm not joking, you'll be hearing this sound countless times, and it is absolutely migraine-inducing. But anyway, what really makes the game unique is the gameplay itself. Now, as I mentioned, the core idea here is that time only moves when you do. Superhot is a first-person shooter in the sense of the perspective and the fact that you shoot guns, but there's never really been anything like this in the genre before. You're vastly outnumbered for every stage in the game, and you have to kill all the remaining enemies before you can progress. How this is done comes down to a few different options. You can punch an enemy 3 times to kill them, or once with a katana or baseball bat. You can finish them off with a single bullet from a pistol, shotgun or machine gun, and later in the game you can take over an enemy's body in what the game refers to as a hot switch, destroying the current one you're inhabiting. Enemies are either unarmed or armed with one of the 3 weapon types and will either aggressively attack your position or hang back and fire at you from a distance. All of the ranged weapons fire projectiles, with the pistol firing a single projectile at a time, the shotgun firing a bunch at once, and the machine gun firing 3 at a time with a much faster firing rate. The rules that apply to how weapons work for enemies also apply to the player. When you're standing still, you've got ample time to line a shot up and fire, but incoming bullets will still continue on their trajectory, giving you a limited window of opportunity to avoid them. You're also often getting attacked from every single angle, so you need some pretty good situational awareness, as well as keeping an eye out for frequently spawning enemies. And to make it more interesting, you'll also need to lead your shots when enemies are on the move. If you take a single hit, it's back to the start of the level, Sunny Jim. What else is pretty cool is how you can throw items like mugs, briefcases, or even empty weapons at enemies, stunning them, which causes their equipped weapon to fly up into the air, allowing you to pick it up and continue on seamlessly. Now, the only other game I can think of that lets you do this kind of thing was in Fear, where if the physics allowed it and you were close enough, you could grab a weapon mid-air as it moved past you. But it definitely looks cooler in Superhot, and it's a fundamental part of the gameplay. Some of the later stages are pretty relentless, and you'll be using all of these skills in quick succession, and that feeling you get when you finally complete a tough stage is pretty gratifying.
Super hot.
But let's get down to the nitty gritty here, Sunny Jim, and talk about the game's problems. Now, for starters, for a game that's been in development for 2 odd years, it doesn't really make any sense that the game is so short. I mean, my first playthrough took me around 80 minutes, and that's with countless deaths and retries. There are a few challenge modes which require you to play the base game under certain conditions, most of which make the game artificially difficult, and then there's also an endless mode where you just take on an infinite amount of enemies in a small room, but neither of these are likely to hold anyone's interest. Another issue is that because of the way the game tells its story, there's no real kind of pause menu or way to quit out of the game, at least in a conventional sense. Every few stages you're thrown back to the main menu, but until that time I couldn't tell whether or not the game was saving my progress, so I figured it best to just keep playing. As is the case with other similar indie games like Hotline Miami and Super Meat Boy, this is one of those trial and error type games. You know, where you just have to kind of replay a level over and over and over until you memorize the lay of the land. And with a game like Superhot and Hotline Miami, the placement of enemies. Now some people like that kind of thing and others do not, and it's something to keep in mind if you want to play this game. In Superhot, it's common for more enemies to spawn in once you've killed a set amount, and usually this happens from behind you, or at the very least in a way that catches you off guard. You'll most likely fall victim to this kind of thing a fair bit, and it can be very, very irritating.
Super hot.
Some of it is just a matter of learning the layout, but there are a few blatantly unfair and cheap levels, though thankfully these are few and far between. I also think it might be worth mentioning that people with epilepsy might have a hell of a time with this game. There's lots of flashing lights and loud sound effects that pop up throughout the game at random, and it's got that grating, lo-fi style soundscape that again we've seen countless times, the kind that makes me want to fall asleep in a bottle of paracetamol. At the end of the day, Superhot is just kind of super underwhelming, and it's a shame because I was genuinely looking forward to this game. It's a proof of concept more than anything else, but the gameplay is unique enough that it will hold your interest whilst it lasts, but once you've spent the hour or so it takes to get through it, you'll be left wanting more, which is something the game just can't deliver.
Super hot. Super hot. Super